Welcome back to my channel, Ragamuffins. My name is Raggy, and today I am bringing you a tier list in which I am going to be looking at all of the zones from the original 3 Sonic the Hedgehog games for the Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis, depends where you're from. But I am going to be rating them today just based on their general quality and how I feel about them, so it's totally just my favorites. But feel free to comment down below which ones are your favorites and why, because I certainly want to know. Anyways, just getting straight into it. In order of how we see them. This looks like Angel Island Zone, and this is, I'm gonna put it in S rank. I'm probably gonna be pretty lenient on all of these because I am a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan, but we'll see. Angel Island Zone is probably a really great introduction to what was Sonic 3 in terms of introducing new characters like Knuckles the Echidna, as well as also giving us a curveball, because halfway through Angel Island Zone, not even halfway, but, you know, partway through, we actually see the landscape transformed from a lush green landscape, which is typical for a first stage, into a hellfire zone of mayhem and destruction and blah. And it's a cool curveball, and it's something that you should come to expect for a third installment in a game. It was fresh, it was cool, it was interesting, I love it. Next, we have Aquatic Ruin Zone, and I'm going to put this one in B. In terms of water levels, Aquatic Ruin Zone is hardly known for that quality because it is relatively easy to traverse the entire zone without really submerging yourself in water at all if you really want to avoid it. And in the spirit of that, I have to rate it as a B because while it respects the player's desire to not deal with water, water is a recurring theme in Sonic games, or at least the 2D ones, so giving you the option to just completely avoid it like that, while you do need some skill in order to do that, I think it's a bit of a cop-out, and it's okay, it gets a pass. It's a well-designed level otherwise, but I would consider the level that comes before it, Chemical Plant Zone, a bigger water level, but it's not, you know, it's not intended to be the water level. But I've died drowning in Chemical Plant Zone way more times than I ever drowned in Aquatic Ruin Zone, which is, it's kind of weird. Then we have Carnival Night Zone, and that's a B. I wanted to say A, but the problem with Carnival Night Zone is that the level is just a bit too long, and that's the problem with a lot of the levels in Sonic 3, is it just really overstays its welcome. Of all of the levels, Carnival Night Zone is really the only one I've ever had the issue with running out of time, of getting a legitimate time out, which is so rare. And like, a lot of people want to talk about the barrel, like as seen in the picture here, and if you know what I'm talking about with the barrel, you know that it was an obstacle that a lot of people didn't realize you could get past by just tapping up and down on the controller. It wasn't that hard to figure out, but people seem to have an issue with it. That's not even a problem for me. My issue is just with how long the stage is. It's a good stage, but like visually it is such a chore on the eyes. It looks cool, but I can handle about 5 minutes of looking at this and then my eyes are like, I need a rest. And it's like the longest level, so it's a good level, but nah. Casino Night Zone, I have to put that one in A. It's not my favorite, but I have to give this one credence because, like, while technically Spring Yard Zone from Sonic 1 started the trend of, like, casino-themed levels, I guess you could say, Casino Night is what really it created a ton of tropes with the jackpot section and everything like that. Like, it's a lot of people's favorite parts of not just Sonic 2, but, like, any Sonic game, so you gotta give it that. Chemical Plant Zone, I have to put it down in C. Chemical Plant is a well-designed level, but it's so hard. And for what is the second zone in the game, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I remember, apparently with Labyrinth Zone in Sonic 1, it was originally intended to be the second level in its game, but it was pushed into a different position because the devs decided that the Labyrinth Zone was way too hard to be the second level. For the same reason, I feel like Chemical Plant Zone should have come a bit later. I feel like the difficulty spike in Sonic 2 is just so drastic. And it's a well-made level, but it should have been much later. Doomsday Zone, which, you know, you think about Sonic levels, you don't really think about just entire boss fights, but there you go. Doomsday Zone, as a zone, not so great. But as an experience, I gotta say this is an A. Just because the entire zone is just chasing after Robotnik at the end of the game and defeating him, the final boss fight. If you cross the T's and dot the I's and get all the emeralds and do all, it's the good ending, essentially. But yeah, no, as giving you an entire bonus zone like this, level, if you will, for, you know, completing more of the game, is very true to what games were like back then. Death Egg Zone, which I wish there had been more to Death Egg Zone. I wish that maybe you'd been able to do these fights with rings by being able to traverse an entire zone to get there, but instead the zone is literally just 2 boss fights that you have to do without any rings. So it's like, it's kind of restrictive. And another annoying thing about it is that the Death Egg Zone music is actually probably like the best track in the entire game, and you get to hear it for all of like 5 seconds, and then you just hear boss music for the rest of the zone. So it's kind of like, I feel like maybe they wanted to have an entire zone there. I don't know, but I'm going to rate this one as a B, because it's okay. Okay, Death Egg Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. For a similar reason to Chemical Plant Zone, I have to rate this one a C. I don't think I've ever gotten a timeout on this one, but this level does overstay its welcome a lot, and I feel like the length of this level contributes to the difficulty that it should have, which makes sense. It's like the last level pretty much before you get to like the Doomsday Zone. But it takes so long, and I don't mind how hard the level is, but it could have been a little shorter. Emerald Hill Zone, as an introductory level to the series, this one just crosses the T's and dots the I's. Cool thing is that there are enough star posts in this level that you can feasibly get Supersonic before you get to Chemical Plant Zone. So that's cool. I like that. I assume they thought about these things, so I appreciate that level of polish. Flying Battery Zone. Similar to Chemical Plant and the Death Egg Zone, kind of overstays its welcome a little bit, but it's got a lot of cool stuff in it, and a lot of secrets, so I'm going to rate it a B. Definitely. Okay, so this is the... I forget what this level is called, but this is not Scrap Brain Zone. This is similar to Sonic 2. The boss fight at the end of the level is like the final zone. So I'm not going to rate it very high. I'm just going to put it down in C, honestly, because like for the first final boss fight in the series, it's alright. But if you look at it objectively, it's I feel like it's also the easiest as well. So, you know, like it's not bad. It's okay. As a zone, they should have just let you get to this fight by traversing a level as well. That's another thing. Like, give you the chance to come in with some rings, maybe. Green Hill Zone. I am going to put Green Hill Zone, quite controversially, in B, because this is the OG level in the Sonic series. But we have seen so much Green Hill Zone. Too much, in fact. The problem with Green Hill Zone is nothing to do with the zone itself, but the fact that Sega has remade Green Hill Zone so many times that I'm sick of looking at it. The music, the aesthetic, every element of Green Hill Zone, if I never see it again, that'll be fine. So I'm going to rate it a B for that reason. Then we have Hydro City, and don't at me about it being pronounced Hydrocity or Hydro City, I don't care. As far as water levels go, this is actually really good. I'm going to rate it an S, actually, because it forces you to traverse water, but is not outstandingly hard. As the second zone in its game, that actually makes a lot of sense. That they did a really good job of creating a water zone, which are typically very hard, but they made it like the level of difficulty scaled with how far along in the game you would actually be at that point, and it is only the second level in that game. So it worked out really well. It does drag on a little bit. It is pretty easy to get stuck or to lose your bearings, but for a veteran like myself, there's not much negative to say about Hydro City level. Then we have Hidden Palace Zone, and I'm going to rate Hidden Palace Zone as a B, just because the experience of Hidden Palace Zone is awesome. Being there, it's an amazing thing. The way that you get there through Lava Reef Zone, and you kind of just see like the surroundings in Lava Reef Zone kind of just become the Hidden Palace Zone. It's really cool, but it's not really a zone. You are not intended to ever lose a life here, except maybe against Knuckles, but I feel like that fight is so easy that they didn't intend that either. Hidden Palace Zone is more like an interactive cutscene, and if that's what they wanted it to be, then perfect. But as a zone for actually playing in, there were like one or two little secrets in there as well, like hidden ring boxes and lives and stuff, but apart from that, it wasn't really a level. Then we have Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2. And Hilltop Zone, I'm going to put it down in C. For all intents and purposes, Hilltop Zone is a well-designed level. It scales with how difficult it should be for that far into the game, but the music is whiny, and it's really hard, and the rising lava parts always freaked me out growing up. I didn't like it. So, sorry if you love Hilltop Zone. Ice Cap Zone, that's a big old S rating. It's relatively easy to get through. The intro with the snowboarding scene, it's really cool. Fun idea. Loved that they did that. Wish there was more of that in these games. And then the music as well is probably, it's some of the best in the entire series, not just that game. Launch Base Zone. I actually really hate Launch Base Zone. I'm going to put Launch Base Zone down in D. Launch Base Zone, and it's such a weird thing to say because, like, it should be frustrating and hard because it is intended to be the last level played in Sonic 3. So it's as frustrating as it should be. But it overstays its welcome. I don't like it aesthetically. And it's just, I feel like it's a little too hard. And the boss fights at the end, it's just a weird layer of confusion because depending on if you're playing Sonic 3 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the boss fight at the end is totally different. And then it segues into Mushroom Hill Zone, which is considerably easier, and it just feels very confusing. Then we have Lava Reef Zone, and as a cop-out for the exact same reasons, I'm going to say that Lava Reef Zone is actually an A rating. It's not actually the last level, but it feels like a last level, and it's, like, as difficult as it is visually very stimulating, and there's a lot of cool stuff in it, especially with, like, they tested a whole bunch of new stuff with, like, physics, like the way smoke works with the character, the way fire works with the character. It's a lot of cool stuff they explored here. Then we have Labyrinth Zone, and I have to put Labyrinth Zone down into D section. Even if they did move Labyrinth Zone to be later in the game to make the difficulty feel more natural, it's still really frustrating and hard, and I've never not once in my life enjoyed playing through Labyrinth Zone. Then we have Mystic Cave Zone, and I gotta give Mystic Cave Zone an A rating. Just because, like, similar to Hilltop Zone, it is a visually stimulating level, it's well designed, it's well put together, the difficulty feels right for where you're up to in that game. But unlike Hilltop Zone, Mystic Cave Zone, it doesn't annoy me, it doesn't bug me. There's not a lot in that game that makes me, like, rue my existence. There's one part with the pit of spikes, if you know what I'm talking about. You know, it's like the cheapest, worst thing in the game, especially if you're Supersonic, and then you just have to wait for yourself to run out of rings, or you can just reset the game, but no one does that. But apart from that, Mystic Cave Zone, there's not really anything wrong with it. It's just a well-placed level, honestly. Marble Garden Zone is, I'm gonna put that one as a C. Marble Garden Zone aesthetically is very good, but similar to Carnival Night and a few others, it really overstays its welcome. And I feel like in Sonic 3 in particular, levels overstaying their welcome were a problem. And I think maybe that has to do with the fact that the levels were one big level. There were 2 acts per zone, but you didn't, like, segue with, like, a screen fade out into another level. You just kind of kept moving. So it felt like one gigantic level that took forever to get through, and sometimes it would, especially if you were doing all the bonus levels and collecting all the giant rings. It took a long time. Then we have Mushroom Hill Zone, and as the first level to Sonic and Knuckles, this is great. I liked that the scenery changed. It became like kind of like a summer to an autumn, and then it introduced a lot of cool new stuff that we never would have considered seeing in, like, the original Sonic for, like, Sonic 1. So I'm going to rate this one as an S, actually. I really enjoyed playing this one. This also, similar to Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles did a good job of showing you that there were multiple paths depending on what character you chose, and Mushroom Hill Zone was a great introduction to this concept if you hadn't already wrapped your head around it by playing as Knuckles in Sonic 3. Then we have Metropolis Zone, I believe it is called. Metropolis Zone, I'm going to put it down as a C. This ticks all of the boxes for what I hate in the level. It overstays its welcome, it's hard as hell, and it's just annoying. Like, the music starts out cool, but it gets more and more and more annoying as you progress, and after you've died like a dozen times in this level, the music really starts to grate on you. Then we have Marble Zone, and Marble Zone is okay, it's an A. It's a weird progression, especially since it's the first game in the series, but they gave you Green Hill Zone, which is like happy fun, and then they give you like this lava landscape, which is like, what? Such a 180. But it is its own thing. There's no level that really looks like this. The next level that really revolves around the use of excessive lava is Lava Reef Zone, and that's like 2 whole games later. So Marble Zone really made this its own thing. Oil Ocean Zone is an A. Oil Ocean Zone is a fun level. There's a lot of cool, interesting stuff to see in it. It probably has some of the most interesting badniks or enemies that you encounter in the game, with like the little octopus, the little pink octopus thing, or the little floating seahorses. But there's so much to see, and I liked even more in Sonic Mania when they revisited this level, and they introduced the whole thing where, like, if you went down into the oil wearing a fire shield, it would explode the oil, which makes sense. Someone had a lot of good ideas with Oil Ocean Zone, and I'm very happy with it. Then we have Scrap Brain Zone, and you're probably starting to see that I really do not care for final levels. I'm going to rate this one a D, literally just because it's so hard. It's not enjoyably hard. Literally, like, even if you are practiced at this level, you will take hits every second. So it just becomes like a matter of like taking hits and collecting your rings, and you just fumble fart your entire way all the way back, or all the way to the end. And then you have to fight the final boss with no rings anyway. So it's kind of like, what was all of that struggling even for? Sky Chase Zone is going to get an A. Sky Chase Zone, I don't think anyone dislikes Sky Chase Zone. It's pretty chill. It's relatively easy, especially since just before that came Metropolis Zone. So you go through 3 levels in one zone of absolute hell, and then it gives you Sky Chase Zone, which is pretty chill. And then it kind of gets you back on track with Air Base Zone, or whatever. Air Fortress? I can't remember the next level's name, but whatever. Then we have Starlight Zone, and Starlight Zone is okay. It's going to get a B. For how far along it is in the game, it is quite easy. Like, it feels more similar to Green Hill Zone than later levels in the original Sonic the Hedgehog game. So I like the music, I like the aesthetic, but there should have been a little more to it, or in a rare case, this zone should have been just a little bit longer. That's how I feel. Then we have Sky Sanctuary Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and I'm gonna give this one an A, because like, getting to Sky Sanctuary Zone was such a cool experience the first time we did it. It was after all the cutscenes with Knuckles. You get to fight Mecha Sonic like 3-4 times, depending on who you're playing as. It's like, it was a cool, unique experience, and they let you fight the Egg Robos. You get to jump on clouds. It was a lot of fun. Then we have Spring Yard Zone, and Spring Yard Zone is a C. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with Spring Yard Zone. It was kind of hard. It was about as hard as a third zone in a game should be. It was like something that will never get old in Spring Yard Zone is the music. I think the Spring Yard Zone might actually have the best music of all of the zones in Sonic 1. Comment if you disagree and tell me which music from Sonic 1 you think is the best. But I really like Spring Yard's music, for sure. Then, another level with excellent music is Sandopolis. And here's the thing, okay? Sandopolis, I'm going to give it an S. Because Sandopolis Zone, as a zone from Sonic 3, it features 2 acts in a zone, but they are separated by being outside of the pyramid and inside of the pyramid. I assume it's a pyramid, a tomb, whatever. And in this case, the 2 separate levels do not feel like they overstay their welcome, because they are separated by the nuance of having to go through a doorway. And I don't know if that's why they don't feel shorter. They feel about as long as they need to be. But the boss fights in both of these levels are very memorable, hard to forget for sure. The ghosts introduced in the second level are very unique. I think they've only seen that element re-explored, really. Maybe in Sonic Mania, I forget. Sonic Adventure 2, maybe? It's a very unique thing, but when you think about ghosts in a Sonic level, you always think of Sandopolis. It's a well-made level, good music, good design, doesn't overstay its welcome. Love Sandopolis. And then lastly, Skybase Zone. And if that's not what it's called, then I'm sorry, but that's how I remember it. Skybase Zone is going to go into C. It was hard as hell, but as the last legitimate zone before you get to the final boss fight in that game, the music was awesome. It was spectacular. To be on a moving plane like that, I remember being so excited when I was a young child every time I got to see Skybase Zone, because it was like this, just getting there was a huge achievement, and aesthetically it was really interesting. Like, I don't think a Sonic level has ever held my attention so well as Skybase Zone did, because to this day, that aesthetic just works for me. Even like, they re-explored being in a moving aircraft in Flying Battery Zone in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and that was cool, but it felt different. Skybase Zone just totally, in its own way, really owned the whole like doing a level in the sky thing, and I love it. And with that said, these have been my decisions, my favorites from the first 3/4 Sonic games, with the first main Sonic games, Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles. So, comment down below which ones are your favorites and why. Do we agree, are we in sync, or are we at odds? Definitely want to know that. If you enjoyed this video today, then definitely give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit the bell icon as well so you can get instant updates anytime there's a new upload. Until next time, my Ragamuffins, I will see you next time. Have a good one!